Welcome back to World of Immersion. Today we have a very special video, and it's a video I've been wanting to do for a very long time, and that is we're going to be ranking the top 25 dark rides that I have been on. Now, I've been on a ton of different dark rides all across the US and in Europe, as well as some parks in Tokyo, so there are a ton of dark rides to cover on this list, and I feel like every single ride on this list is incredible, and some of my favorite rides on the planet. However, before we start today's video, be sure to hit that subscribe button so you never miss when we have brand new content. It shows that over 97% of you guys who watch these videos are not subscribed, so please hit that subscribe button if you enjoy the content, and it helps out the channel a ton. With that being said, let's get right into the video. Now, one thing I do want to briefly mention is the kind of rides that I'm going to be including on this video. Now, I'm going to be sticking to what I would consider just purely dark rides, so that means no water rides and no drop towers. However, if a ride is mostly dark ride, I am going to be considering it. So, for example, a ride like Pirates of the Caribbean, which is the majority a dark ride, I think the water aspect kind of comes second to the dark ride aspect, will be considered. However, a ride like Tiana's Bayou Adventure, which is majority a water ride and the dark ride portions are kind of added on, I'm not going to consider that. I know it's kind of a random things to consider, but it's just how I would consider it, and that's how I just want to do this list. I think it's just a little bit easier that way. I am going to have a full separate video with water rides, so that's why I wanted to do this one this way. Additionally, rides like Tower of Terror and Guardians of the Galaxy, I'm going to consider drop towers and not dark rides, so those ones won't be on this list as well. But with that being said, we can move right on. Alright, so starting off, I do want to give out some honorable mentions first, and these are unfortunately rides that I have not had the chance to do yet. And the first one is going to be Pirates of the Caribbean over at Disneyland Paris. Now, unfortunately, while I have been on some of the other versions of this ride, the one at Disneyland Paris I have yet to experience, and I have heard that this is the best version of the ride, so I feel like it would absolutely have a spot on this list. I just want to give out that honorable mention. While I have been to Disneyland Paris, it was unfortunately closed. And another honorable mention is going to be all of Fantasy Springs. Now, while you may see some Tokyo Disney Sea rides on here, I have not yet been to Fantasy Springs. In fact, we went just a few weeks to the park before it opened, unfortunately. We planned out our trip just a little bit with unfortunate timing there. So like I said, you will not see any Fantasy Springs dark rides on this list. But without further ado, let's get right into number 25. And at number 25 is unfortunately a ride that will be closing forever very, very shortly, and that is going to be Dinosaur over at Animal Kingdom. Now, while this ride is a little bit outdated, it is still a ton of fun. It is one of the scariest dark rides I've ever been on. Some of the animatronics don't work as well, but if anything, it kind of adds to the scariness factor. I love this dark ride. I really am sad that it's going. I know that whatever replaces it will be better, but it is such a charming and old school ride, and I love this one. The storyline is great too. It feels very old school Disney, and I love it. And like I said, it is very dark and spooky in there. Honestly, if I was a little kid, I would probably be terrified of this ride, so I can understand why Disney's moving on from this onto something a little more enjoyable for the whole family, but it's still one of my favorite rides. And coming in at number 24 is going to be a much more modern ride, and that's Mario Kart Bowser's Challenge. Now, I am going to be lumping in every single one of the Mario Karts into this ranking here. While they aren't all exactly the same, they are very, very similar, so I feel like it's better to just include them all as one. So that's going to be the one at Universal Studios Hollywood, Universal Studios Japan, and the brand new one at Epic Universe. And these are all great rides. I think the queue is one of the best queues I have been through. It's incredible. It's very, very immersive. And while the augmented reality isn't the best on this ride, I think that the physical sets that you're going through are just so incredible that I had to put it on this list. It's one of the biggest classic dark rides that Universal has ever built. It's got a ton of animatronic, it's got a ton of incredible set design, and the augmented reality definitely works decently well. I like that there's that fun shooting aspect of the ride. I really like how there's a limited amount of the shells that you get to shoot. It adds a little bit more skill to it rather than just kind of blasting away like most other shooting dark rides. But it's a ton of fun. I highly recommend checking this one out if you're visiting at any of the parks. And coming in at number 23 is a ride that completely shocked me when I rode it. In fact, I didn't even know this ride existed when I visited the park. That's going to be the Curse of Tutankhamun over at Wallaby, Belgium. This ride is crazy. This was honestly one of my favorite rides in the entire park, and I was completely blown away. Like I said, I had no clue this ride even existed, but it is a ton of fun. It is a trackless shooting dark ride. However, I don't even think it needs the shooting aspect in order to be good. You can honestly ride this ride and not even pick up the gun once, and it is still incredible. The sets in this ride are incredible. The animatronics are amazing. And honestly, I was just completely blown away that this wasn't at a Disney or Universal park. This dark ride is amazing. I highly recommend checking out Wallaby Belgium for this ride alone. It is a ton of fun, incredibly immersive, and such a blast to ride. Now, coming in at number 22 is going to be the one and only Mickey and Minnie's Runaway Railway. Now, once again, we're going to be lumping in both the one over at Disneyland and Hollywood Studios because the rides are practically the same. I think Disneyland's has one small minor extra scene. However, they're very, very similar, so we're just going to be including both of them. This ride is great. It is a very modern dark ride, however, it definitely feels still very old school. I think this is how you do a ride that's kind of mostly screen based. It's screen based, however, it definitely doesn't feel like it. The sets are really, really well designed. I love all the scenes where the rooms completely transform. It's got one really, really cool animatronic towards the end, and just overall, this ride's a blast. Honestly, I was completely blown away the first time I rode it. I had no clue what to expect, and I was very pleasantly surprised. It's a great modern dark ride from Disney, and I hope that they continue to make more rides like this one. And coming in at number 21 is going to be Test Track over at Epcot. This ride is great. I haven't had the chance yet to ride the Test Track 3.0, and it probably honestly will bump up the ride just a little bit in my opinion. But right now it sits at number 21 because I have ridden only Test Track 2.0. But it's great. I love it. I think that the fast section is honestly probably my least favorite part of the ride. It's cool, but there's definitely no theming to go around with it. But that first half is great. The theming is really, really cool. And like I said, Test Track 3.0 looks even better. I love when rides are able to combine both thrill and theming, and I think this one does it decently well. However, there are definitely going to be more rides similar to this one later on the list, so be sure to stay tuned for those. And moving on to our top 20, and coming in at number 20, we have the one and only Phantom Manor over at Disneyland Paris. Now, I'm not going to be including all the Haunted Mansions lumped in with this one, because this one is definitely very, very different. And it's really cool, however, I definitely prefer the other ones just a little bit. This ride is very, very cool. I think the other ones just have a little bit more charm to them. However, like I said, it's very cool that this one's unique. I love that Disneyland Paris has its own version of the ride. I think that it's really cool that they're not doing the exact same ride at all the other ones. This one's got kind of more of a Frontierland theme. It's very different, especially towards the end. It's got a lot of the same scenes, but there are a few scenes that are completely unique to this one. I think my favorite part of this ride is honestly the loading station. This is by far the best loading station out of any of the Haunted Mansion rides. This one is very, very cool. You've got that huge staircase with the animatronic. It is really cool, especially compared to the one over at Disneyland, which has practically nothing. However, like I said, I definitely prefer the other versions just a little bit. However, I can completely understand preferring this version because this one is very unique and very cool. And coming in at number 19 is going to be another Disney ride, and this one's over at Tokyo Disneyland, and this is Pooh's Honey Hunt. This ride is awesome. It is a trackless dark ride. In fact, it was the first ever trackless dark ride, and it completely holds up today. It is crazy to me that this ride was built over 20 years ago and still holds up so well today. It is by far the best version of Winnie the Pooh. It tells the same story that the one over at Disneyland tells, however, this one tells it so much better. There are so many cool, incredible effects on this ride. I especially love the one towards the end. You got the Heffalumps and Woozles scene, and you've got another ride vehicle with some of the characters in it spinning while you're going around it. It utilizes the trackless technology so well, and like I said, it is just crazy to me that this ride is over 20 years old. I highly recommend checking this one out if you're at Tokyo Disneyland. Do not skip it. Do not think it's just a regular old Winnie the Pooh ride. This is by far the best one and one of my favorite dark rides on the planet. And coming in at number 18 is a ride over at Epcot, and that is going to be Spaceship Earth. This ride is truly incredible. Honestly, I knew absolutely nothing about this ride before I rode it back in 2021 for the first time. The only thing I knew is that it was inside of the giant Epcot ball, and it is crazy to me that they pack so much ride into that giant sphere. On top of that, this ride has some incredible set design and so many animatronics. It's one of the longest dark rides on this list, and the set design is truly one of the best. I am a huge fan of Spaceship Earth. It's one of my favorite rides in all of Epcot, and I highly recommend checking this one out when you're visiting the park. It is one of those old school Disney dark rides, and it holds up so well today. Now, coming in at number 17 is once again a ride that I didn't even know existed at the park when we visited, and that is the dark ride over at Alton Towers, Curse at Alton Manor. This ride completely blew all of us away. It is one of the scariest, if not the scariest dark rides I have been on. The queue is very well themed. I love that first outdoor portion where you're walking through the haunted forest. It looks great. And then as soon as you enter the actual manor, it is so well detailed. It's got some optical illusions in there. And then you get into that loading station and you have the cool ride vehicle. I love that you are alone on this ride. It's just your vehicle. It makes it even more scary. And this ride is dark. It is very dark. It's got some great jump scares as well. Truly one of my favorite dark rides I have been on, and I was completely shocked and it was actually my favorite ride at all of Alton Towers. If you told me before I visited Alton Towers that my favorite ride there would be a dark ride, I would have said you were crazy. But it is truly incredible. I highly recommend checking this one out. It seemed to also never get a line the entire day we were there, which was great. And just one step above it is a ride that I have been on almost more than any other dark ride on this list, and that is Harry Potter and the Forbidden Journey. Now, Universal Studios Hollywood is one of my home parks, so I've been on this ride so many times. However, once again, we're going to be including all of the versions of this ride, so that is 4 different versions. That's crazy to me that there are 4 different versions. That's one at Universal Studios Hollywood, Universal Studios Japan, Universal Studios Beijing, and Islands of Adventure. They are all practically the same ride. But this ride is really, really incredible. It's got one of the best queues on the planet. Be sure to check out our top 10 theme park queues if you want to see just where it ranks in terms of queues. It's one of my favorite ride systems as well on any dark ride. I love the Kuka arm ride system, and it utilizes it so well. The set design is really amazing. There are some awesome animatronics on this ride. And while I don't love the screen portions too much, I don't think they really take away from the ride that much at all. I think the physical sets really make this ride just so much better. And it's a long ride, it's very immersive, and especially those giant animatronics like the spider and the dragon and the giant tree, those are incredible. This ride is just a ton of fun. I highly recommend checking this one out if you're visiting any of the parks it's at. It is absolutely one of the best dark rides on the planet. And just one step above it, just slightly better in my opinion, is another Harry Potter dark ride. And honestly, a lot of people may have this a lot higher on the list, but for me it comes in at number 15, and that is going to be Harry Potter and the Battle at the Ministry. Now, don't get me wrong, this ride is incredible. It has some of the most immersive screens I've ever seen on a ride. They really do feel real. However, that's my main gripe with this ride, is it's almost all screens. I just prefer rides that have physical sets rather than screens. And while this one does have a few physical sets, and the ones it does have are really good, I would just prefer it if it was almost all physical sets. That being said, I do love the queue. It is one of my favorite queues in the world. And I am a huge fan of the ride system. I think the ride system is very impressive. It is crazy to me that they're able to make a ride vehicle that huge move like that. And like I said, some of those screens are very convincing. I think my favorite scene is that one Death Eater scene with the animatronics. Those animatronics are incredible, and the screens behind it flow really well. They look very realistic. But like I said, it's a screen-based ride, so it can't really come in much higher for me on this list than number 15. However, I still do love it, and it's one of my favorite rides over at Epic Universe. And coming in at number 14 is going to be the one and only Sinbad Storybook Voyage over at Tokyo Disney Sea. Now, once again, this is another one of those rides that I didn't even know existed before I visited the park. However, this ride is incredible. It is one of the coolest water-based dark rides that I've ever been on. The sets in this ride are insane. It's got an incredibly catchy soundtrack. It's a very long ride. Just everything about it is amazing. It's very similar to a ride like Pirates of the Caribbean. However, it's definitely different at the same time. I highly recommend checking this one out if you're visiting Tokyo Disney Sea. It is one of the best rides in that park and truly a world-class attraction. And coming in at number 13 is going to be Radiator Springs Racers over at Disney's California Adventure. Now, once again, this is one of the rides that is very similar to Test Track. However, I slightly prefer Radiator Springs Racers. While it's not as thrilling as Test Track is over at Epcot, it's definitely nowhere near as fast. I love the dark ride aspect of it. I think the animatronics are very cool. And I love that you get to race another car at the end. The storyline flows really well, and I just love how beautiful this ride is. It is one of the biggest rides I think I've ever seen. That outdoor portion is massive. It takes up an entire skyline, and it's just a spectacle to watch too. When you're watching those ride vehicles go all the way around you, it is so cool. Truly an incredible ride. Highly recommend checking this one out if you're visiting Disney's California Adventure. I am a huge fan of this ride. However, do be warned, it gets an incredibly long wait. Definitely recommend doing single rider if you can, because that will help out your wait so much. The ride vehicle seats 3 riders per row, so there are a ton of single riders get used, so that single rider line moves really quickly. And coming in at number 12 is going to be the one and only Fata Morgana over at Efteling. This boat ride is similar to Pirates of the Caribbean, but it is incredible. It has so many animatronics on this ride. The set design is also amazing. It is such a long ride. It felt like well over 15 minutes. While the queue is nothing that crazy, the queue definitely feels more like an old school kind of small world style queue, like at Disneyland. But the ride itself is really incredible. As soon as you go through those first curtains, you are completely immersed in the storyline of 1001 Arabian Nights. And it's just truly incredible. I know I use the word incredible a lot, but this ride really does live up to that word. It's an amazing ride. It's got some great set design. And like I said, those animatronics are amazing. So that's why it comes in at number 12. And coming in at number 11 is going to be the last of the rides similar to Test Track, and that is going to be the one and only Journey to the Center of the Earth over at Tokyo Disney Sea. Now this ride is truly incredible. It is one of the coolest dark rides I've ever been on. While it's not as long as Radiator Springs Racers or Test Track, the set design on here is incredible, and the thrilling section is even better in my opinion. The set design in here is truly magical. It has some of the coolest, most immersive sets I've ever seen. I love the pre-show, how it's like an elevator that takes you down, and then you board the ride vehicle, which is by far my favorite of these ride vehicles. It looks so cool. And like I said, while it's not as long, I really do prefer this one compared to the other two. It truly is an incredible ride. I don't want to spoil too much about it, but I will say it has one of the best animatronics I have ever seen on a ride of all time. And it is absolutely a must-do if you are visiting Tokyo Disney Sea. Now moving on to the top 10, and I would say that every single ride on this top 10 is a world-class dark ride. And all of these rides I could completely understand having as your number one favorite dark ride in the world. But for me, coming in at number 10 is going to be the one and only Enchanted Tales of Beauty and the Beast over at Tokyo Disneyland. Now this is a ride that the only word that I feel like you could really use to describe it is just magical. This is absolutely the next step in dark rides in my opinion. The show scenes in here are insane. Every single room comes to life around you. You are completely immersed in the storyline of Beauty and the Beast. It tells the story so perfectly. There are so many amazing effects. I don't want to spoil some of these. I don't even want to know how some of these work because they're just incredible. Every scene you are in for almost 2 to 3 minutes, and I feel like that's perfect. It gives you so much time to fully appreciate what is going on in each scene. And I love that they are able to fully immerse you into the story. It's very subtle in the way that it does it. You are kind of just living through the story. And this ride is just perfect. Like I said, the only word that I can use to describe this ride is magical. You just have to go out and experience it. Videos won't do it justice. It is just an incredible ride. Now going almost to a stark opposite, a ride that's not so much magical, but maybe just more pure fun. Coming in at number 9, we have The Amazing Adventures of Spider-Man over at Islands of Adventure. I am a huge fan of this ride. I feel like it's one of those rides that the more I ride it, the more I love it. Like I said, the only word you can use to describe this ride is just pure fun. It is such an incredibly re-rideable attraction. The screens honestly hold up so well today. I know if they replaced a bunch of them, but the storyline and everything holds up so perfectly. The queue is very comic booky. I love it. The soundtrack is amazing, and you really feel like you are part of the action. I don't understand how they are able to differentiate it so much from rides like Transformers, which is a very similar ride on paper, but this one just has such a different feel. One of those rides that videos will just not do any of it justice at all. You have to experience it yourself. I was very skeptical when I had heard that this was one of the best dark rides in the world until I actually rode it. And let me just say, it really is. You just have to go out and experience it. It's one of my favorite rides that Universal has ever made. And coming in at number 8 is going to be the one and only Haunted Mansion. Now I am including both Disneyland and Magic Kingdom's version here because those are the other two that I've been on, as well as the one over at Tokyo Disneyland. I never got the chance to ride it, however it is definitely very similar to the one over at Magic Kingdom, so I'm going to be lumping all of them in together. And this ride is just amazing. It is an incredibly timeless attraction. Another one of those rides that the more I ride it, the more I just love it. It still has one of the best pre-shows of all time. In fact, this is the ride that really started what a pre-show is. It was built out of a necessity over at Disneyland because they had to get you under the train tracks somehow. And now pre-shows have evolved into something that is almost expected when a ride gets built. But this pre-show is truly incredible, one of the best in the world. And then that dark ride itself is just amazing. It doesn't tell you the story right to your face explicitly. Instead, you kind of have to follow it as you're going from scene to scene. It takes you through the journey through the mansion. And there is absolutely a storyline if you are able to follow it. But I love rides that do that. They take you through a place that really could exist. The Disneyland queue is really, really good in my opinion. It feels like it belongs right there. That mansion belongs absolutely in New Orleans Square. And it feels like you're just taking a tour of this haunted mansion, and it's incredible. One of my favorite little moments of the ride is as you are leaving almost the attic area with all of the different portraits and random little things. You turn around and it's like you're falling backwards out of the building, down into the graveyard. It fits so perfectly. Everything about this ride is just amazing. I could talk on and on about how amazing Haunted Mansion is. If you haven't experienced this ride, what are you doing? Go out to Disneyland or Magic Kingdom or any of the parks that have it. You need to experience the Haunted Mansion. It is such a perfect attraction. And moving on to number 7 is another ride over at Efteling, and that is going to be the one and only Symbolica. This ride is once again one of those rides that is truly magical. It is very similar to Beauty and the Beast in my opinion. However, I do prefer this one just a little bit. I love the storyline of this ride. I love how there are 3 different paths that you can choose. It's interactive too with the different buttons that activate while you're in different scenes. You get to activate and play around with kind of the stuff in the scenes. Additionally, it is a very long ride. It's got an incredible queue and one of the best pre-shows I have ever seen. Once again, like I said, it's just one of those rides that truly is just magical. I feel like a lot of people won't really get this ride. It feels very Disney in my opinion, but it's got its own sort of charm. It's a very modern ride, however, it definitely feels much more like an old school ride in which it is taking you from scene to scene. There's not necessarily a storyline that is directly in your face. It's kind of more nuanced, and I love that kind of ride. I love rides that are like that. I don't love when the story is right in your face. I think a lot of modern attractions kind of do that. But this one just feels so magical. It is incredible. Highly recommend checking out Symbolica. I completely understand the hype that this ride gets. It truly is amazing. And coming in at number 6 is going to be Dream Flight over Efteling, my personal favorite ride in the entirety of Efteling. Now, Dream Flight is not the actual name of the ride. That is the English version of it. However, I am not able to pronounce the actual version, so I'm going to go with Dream Flight here because that's what it translates to. But this is absolutely the best ride that Efteling has ever built, in my opinion. This ride is just incredible. The way that it takes you from scene to scene is amazing. These are some of the biggest scenes I've ever witnessed on any attraction ever. Every single scene is so well detailed. Most of them are all within a forest, and everywhere you look, there's so much to see. You could ride this ride 15 times and still not see everything. There are tons of animatronics everywhere. And really just the scale of this ride is insane to me. I love that you get to see all of these scenes for such a long time too. It is a very, very long ride. One of my favorite scenes too is when you're flying through space. You see all the planets too that are floating. This ride is just magical. It really is such an incredible attraction. It's one of the older rides at Efteling, but it holds up so well today. If you're going to Efteling, do not miss this ride. It's kind of in a random section of the park. It's hard to find it, but do not miss it. It is really an incredible attraction. And you need to go out to Efteling to experience it. It's one of my favorite dark rides on the planet. But moving on to our top 5, and coming in at number 5, we have a dark ride that I have ridden hundreds of times, and that is going to be Pirates of the Caribbean over at Disneyland. Now, unfortunately, the Magic Kingdom one probably wouldn't be on this list. It is very cool, but it's very short compared to the other versions of the ride. But the Disneyland one is insane. This is one of the longest rides I have ever experienced. It is almost 15 minutes long. And if you thought the sets on Dream Flight were insanely big, just wait till you ride this ride. The sets are so massive. There are so much going on in every single scene. It just truly is incredible. These scenes are also insanely immersive. They look like they go on forever. They flow so well. This ride has incredible flow. I love that first scene as you're going past the Blue Bayou restaurant and you're in the bayou, the swamp. It looks insane. It is so incredibly immersive. If you ever get a ride on this like alone or just with your group and it is completely quiet, during that first bayou section, it is just crazy. You feel like you're completely immersed into the bayou. And then it takes you down that drop and into the actual pirates area. The caves are great, but my favorite scene on the entire ride is that giant ship battle. It looks like the sea goes on forever. You got the castle to your right, the boat to your left. Everything is going on. There's so much to see. You could ride this ride 100 times and still not see everything. It is just an incredible attraction, one of my favorite dark rides in the world. It is crazy to me how old this ride is and how well it holds up today. But coming in at number 4 is going to be another Pirates-themed boat ride. However, this one is not at a Disney park, and you may be surprised to see this one over a Pirates of the Caribbean ride, and that is going to be Piraten in Batavia over at Europa Park. I was so incredibly impressed with this ride. It's one of my favorite rides in all of Europa Park, and absolutely one of my favorite rides on the planet. Now, I do slightly prefer this one to Pirates of the Caribbean for just a few factors. I think the sets are even more detailed in my opinion. They are even larger in some of the scenes. While it's not as long as Pirates of the Caribbean over at Disneyland, I think the sets are just a little bit more immersive. I love that first drop into the jungle area. It looks crazy. The lighting in that scene is insane, and then you transition into the village, and the village looks amazing as well. There's so much to see. It is a massive scene. I love the part where you are in the other village and you look up and you can see the stars. You can smell like chai in that scene as well. The pirate battle scenes work great. The animatronics are amazing, and this ride probably has some of the best projection mapping I have ever seen on a ride. Do not miss this ride if you're going to Europa Park. It is one of the best things that they have ever created, and you absolutely need to check it out if you're visiting the park. It is worth a trip out to Europa Park alone for this attraction. and is absolutely one of my favorite dark rides on the planet. But moving on to our top three, and honestly, I had a ton of trouble putting these top three in order because they are all such perfect rides in my opinion. There's literally zero issues I can find with any of these rides. However, I feel like I definitely have solidified my top three order, and that means starting off at number three with the one and only Indiana Jones Adventure. Now I'm talking about both the Disneyland and the Tokyo Disney Sea version. While I do slightly prefer the Tokyo Disney Sea one, the Disneyland one is very, very similar, and they are very close in ranking in my opinion. So I lump them in as one in this ranking. But this ride is just amazing. It is crazy to me that this ride is also over 20 years old. It holds up so well today. That first large scene is just so impressive. It is still one of the best reveals on any ride of all time. I still love the ride system. I think that ride vehicle is really, really fun. It combines both thrill and theming so perfectly. Some of the effects on this ride are insane too. They hold up so well. I know some of them don't work as well, like that first scene where it used to have the rotating room where you would go into different doors. Now it's just projection mapping. But some of them definitely still work. Like the final boulder scene, that works really well when the effect is working, which is most of the time at this point. But that's really cool. The entire room actually moves backwards because the ride vehicle itself can't move backwards. They had to find a way to make it look like you were reversing, and it's done so well. Like I said, I do prefer the one over at Disney Sea just a little bit. I think the effects are a little bit cooler. The ride motion is just a little bit smoother, but like I said, they are very, very similar. This ride also is one of the best queues of all time. Just everything about this ride is amazing. Still one of the best rides in the world. Holds up so incredibly well today. Absolutely check out this one if you're visiting either of the two parks that it's at. And I am very excited for the one that's potentially coming to Animal Kingdom. I feel like it has the opportunity to top both of these, which would be insane because it's a modern ride. But moving on to number two, but this is going to be actually one of the newest rides on the list, and that is Monsters Unchained: The Frankenstein Experiment over at the brand new Epic Universe. Now this ride I had the highest expectations for pretty much out of any ride that I've ridden, and it still somehow exceeded my expectations. Everything from the queue to the pre-show to the ride itself is so incredibly perfect. The queue is very eerie and spooky. It's one of my favorite queues of all time actually. Like I said, be sure to check out that top 10 queues video. You can see just where it ranks. But then the pre-shows are some of the best pre-shows in the world. The first pre-show is cool. It's definitely a little bit spooky. You got Igor with his mask on and it's very eerie. And then he eventually reveals his mask and it's a little bit less scary because Igor is not that scary of a character. But I think that's kind of cool. It's a little more lighthearted. I love that you see the ride vehicles flipping around and going crazy. It really sets up the ride to be a lot scarier than it actually is because that ride vehicle is spinning around like crazy. But then that second pre-show is amazing. I don't love the projection mapping on the first face of the animatronic, but the Frankenstein animatronic itself is insane. One of the best animatronics I've ever seen. It is so tall and insanely lifelike. And we haven't even gotten to the ride itself. The loading station is insane. One of my favorites in the world. There's so much kinetic energy with the electricity flowing everywhere. It is a massive loading station. On top of that, this ride has some of the best capacity I've ever seen on a ride. That line moves so fast. And then the ride itself is just insane. There are more lifelike animatronics on this one than pretty much any ride I've ever seen. Every single one of these animatronics is so fluid and massive too. Some of my favorites include the Wolfman animatronic that swoops down at you. I love all the Frankenstein animatronics, especially the one towards the beginning of the ride that he grabs onto the electricity thing. And that first scene of the ride is probably one of the best scenes in any dark ride in the world. It is a massive showroom. I love the animatronic that's playing the organ. It looks insane. I love the Phantom of the Opera as he's playing the organ. It looks insane. And then he turns to you. His face is terrifying. It looks so cool. Everything about this ride is just amazing. While it does use screens a decent amount, I think it really blends screens and animatronics and physical sets more well than most rides do on the planet. And I don't really mind the screens that much. It's definitely very different than the kind of screens that are on something like Harry Potter and the Forbidden Journey. Because that ride has those turntables, so it's more like motion simulators. The screens are just there to enhance the ride rather than be the ride itself. But this ride is just amazing. If you're at Epic Universe, do not miss out on this ride. It's not too crazy scary, so if that's something you're worried about, you don't have to really be worried. It's more similar to something like Haunted Mansion in terms of scariness, but that's okay. It's not meant to be super scary, I feel like. It's meant to be kind of more just fun, action, and adventure scary, and I love it. This ride is just amazing. One of my favorite dark rides on the planet. But after some careful consideration, I have not put it at number one because that honor still belongs to the one and only Rise of the Resistance over at Disneyland and Hollywood Studios. Once again, these are the exact same ride, but I couldn't put this ride anywhere lower than number 1. It is just perfect. I have full separate videos about this ride on the channel, so be sure to check that one out if you haven't already. So I'm not going to talk for a ton of time about this ride, but it's just amazing. If we're talking about pre-shows, this has like 3 different pre-shows, and all of them are really, really good. In fact, one of them is a ride itself. You hop on a pre-show to get onto a ride, to get into another pre-show, to get onto the actual ride, which is just insane. No other ride on the planet has this level of scale. The sets on this ride are just massive. The animatronics are incredible. And this is just one of those rides that is just perfect. Every single person I've ever brought on this ride loves it. They think it's incredible. If you're a huge thrill seeker, you'll love this ride too, because it's got some great thrilling moments. If you love dark rides, you'll love this ride. Just every person will love this ride. It really is just one of the best dark rides in the world. And like I said, I couldn't put it at anything lower than number 1 in my opinion. But that's going to do it for our video today of ranking my top 25 dark rides of all time. I know it was a long video, so thank you so much if you've stuck with us the whole way. Be sure to comment down below what your favorite dark rides are. If there's anything that I've missed, stuff I have yet to go on that I absolutely need to. I feel like I have a very good collection of top 25 dark rides. However, there are still some out there that I really want to experience, so be sure to comment down below. Thank you so much for watching World of Immersion today, and we'll catch you in the next video.